Hello everyone, welcome to our webinar, Art-Based Format for Dialogue in Conflict Transformation. Let me introduce myself. I am Kawther Alkholy. I am the AD of Women for Justice Foundation. This event is in cooperation with Arts Foundation and Tanaghom Academy, which one of Women for Justice project. It's an honor to have the opportunity to address such a distinguished audience. And thank Maja Leo, the Peacebuilding and theater expert in Beirut, Lebanon, for her time to support peacebuilders' efforts around the world. Before I hand the mic over to Maja, let me start by saying just a few words about Women for Justice Foundation, Tanaghom Academy, and She Built Peace campaign, and as well a few housekeeping items. WJF is a Canadian nonprofit organization aiming at developing and implementing activities that enhance women participation, boost community development, and promote rights, social justice, peace, and dialogue through advocacy, networking, and researching. We adopt in Women for Justice peace-building approach in our projects such as She Built Peace. She Built Peace is a global campaign was launched in March 2020 this year by International Civil Society Action Network, ICANN, and members of the Women's Alliance for Security Leadership, WASL. She Built Peace is a collaborative campaign and a global call to action to stand with women peace builders. Our project, Tanaghom Academy, is specialized in delivering and organizing online and offline training courses and summer schools in the field of peace and conflict transformation since 2014. So I invite you to stay tuned for our upcoming event, Online Tanaghom School for Art and Peace Building, which will set soon, and we will share the exact date and time in our website and social media, and as well your email. The training is going to be a 10 days online training to train peace activists and artists who are living in conflict areas in Africa and Asia to participate in peace building through arts in their local communities. This online training will be an introductory interactive course which will prepare participants to attend more intense offline practical training workshop in the future. Today's topic is about art-based format for dialogue in conflict transformation. In the next 45 minutes, Maja will present the artistic approaches in peace building program, Lebanon as a case study, and how art can be integrated in dialogue setting. It's an honor to introduce Maja Leo. Maja is peace building professional with background in theater directing. She is design performative format for dialogue. She is currently working an advisor for GIZ, Civil Peace Service in Lebanon, and has previously worked in Georgia and Switzerland for Arts Foundation, the Swiss Foundation for Art in region of conflict. In terms of housekeeping items, first, today's webinar will be available on demand after the live session and is accessible through the link which I will share with you in chat. Next, we would love to hear from you during today's presentation. If you have any question or our speaker to us or our speaker, please feel free to send it through the Ask Question tab in the bottom of your player. And last, we would like to encourage you to share today's webinar with your social network. Thank you, and the mic now with Maja. Maja.
Thank you very much, Kawther. Can you all hear me well?
Yes.
Perfect. So, yes, I'm really honored having the opportunity to talking to all of you today. And I'm also hoping that we will have a fruitful discussion, especially in the end. But as Kawther was saying, feel free to ask questions anytime during my presentation already. I think we managed to enable the speaking function for all audience members, so we should be able to have at least a little bit of an interactive setting here. And let me quickly introduce myself, and then I will share my screen with the presentation with you. And then I think I cannot see the chat anymore. So Kawther, if there's anyone raising their hands or if there are questions, please be so kind to pass them on to me.
Please, yes. Maja, tell me when you would like to appear the poll. Okay?
Yes, I will, of course. Yes. Exactly. So my name is Maja. As Kawther was mentioning, I'm based in Beirut, in Lebanon, and I have been working here for the last 2 years. And I'm a trained theater director, but I ended up working for a quite formal governmental organization in Peacebuilding. So this is also why I would like to discuss today a little bit more the institutional perspective on artistic approaches in peacebuilding settings. The GIZ, for those of you who don't know, it's the German Agency for International Cooperation. We are the implementing agency of the German Federal Ministry for Economic Development and Cooperation. And I'm working for the Civil Peace Service. This is a dialogue, social cohesion, and conflict transformation program. We're operating in 20 different countries around the world. And here in Lebanon, we also have one portfolio. Yes, for the rest, I think I will share my screen, and really if there are any questions or discussions, please ask your questions and let's have a lively discussion between. So now Now I think you should be able to see the presentation, right?
Yes.
Perfect. So a little bit the agenda. At first, I would like to get to know you a little bit. I prepared a little poll. We will get there in a minute to also learn a little bit from you and what your backgrounds are, and also to set the ground for our discussion afterwards. Then I would like to quickly talk about how art can invite us to look at the world and interact with the world a little bit differently than we usually do. And then I will present a couple of examples from Lebanon, how artistic approaches can be included in more classical peace-building programs. And the last part I would like to talk about is a little bit of a future outlook, because it's a field that has not been worked into so much. It's the field of cultural diplomacy and the question how art could be integrated into more formal dialogue settings as well. My presentation shouldn't be longer than maximum 40 to 45 minutes, and then we will still have time for the Q&A and for a discussion. So Kawther, now would be the moment for the first question in the poll. First of all, I would like to know who of you participated in the last webinar, the one that Dagmar, I think she's also here, a colleague from artasfoundation, was hosting in September, where she was already talking about the connection of art and peace building. So if you could now fill in the questionnaire. I don't know, Kawther, if we can see the result right away or if we have to do all the questions and then we see the results in the end.
As you like, but now just 2 persons participate in the polling, so I encourage the participant to join our pool.
Yes, please. Did we get any results yet?
Just 10 persons participate, so we need more people to participate. So there is 58, just 58 participant that they participate. So if you don't mind, we can give them more minutes to participate in the poll, okay?
And this is only for the first question or for all of them?
For all of them.
Okay, so the question would be, who of you has experience in the peacebuilding sector, either professionally or as a volunteer or in your community, or if you are generally interested in peacebuilding but have no previous working experience yet? And the third question would be, who of you has experience in the art field, if you are a professional artist, a curator, or other art professional, or maybe you just enjoy art in your leisure time, or music or dancing, or usually maybe also you don't have anything to do with art.
Now 82% from the participants share their thoughts. So
Yeah.
if you would like to end the poll now, I can.
Yeah, so we can see them, sure. Okay, so we see some of you, but most of you didn't participate in the last one. And then we have quite a lot of people who work professionally in the peacebuilding sector or as volunteers. And also around half of you have not yet been in touch with peacebuilding as much. And for the art field, there are 20% art professionals, and then 60% nearly who enjoy art in the free time. That's quite a lot. And then 20% who don't have anything to do with art. Okay, thank you very much. This is very interesting for me also to see where to focus on. For the next question, I would like you to use the chat function and just type from the top of your head, what is your first associations if you hear, what is peacebuilding? And I will exit the full screen mode for a second so I can read in the chat window with you. So I think I have to stop sharing my screen for a second. Okay, so the question would be, what is peacebuilding for you? Just write anything in the chat function that comes from the top of your mind. Or raise your voice if you would like to speak up. Dialogue? Yeah, sure. Empathy is also an interesting point, yes. Conflict resolution, working in the direction of a just human society. It's quite an advanced definition, no surprise since it's coming from Dagmar. Then we have peacebuilding is a word that needs lots of actions and hard work to achieve. I think this probably everybody would sign immediately. Okay. So we see it has something to do with getting people in touch with each other, as we can see in the points of dialogue and empathy. And then it has to do something with the human dimension in society, which includes also working on the topic. For the next question, there's another one, imagination. Yes, also very true, especially for the conflict resolution part, I think. Yes, you have to know what to imagine. There's another one. Tools to achieve this matter, maybe have background knowledge about the discussed matter. Not quite sure if I understand this one. Ahmad, maybe you would like to elaborate on this a little bit? I'm not sure if Ahmad can talk in this setting, Kawther?
Yes, everyone can talk. Ahmed, please try now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you for having me in this discussion. I wanted to ask, like, for a small introduction, because maybe I came late, about this this meeting. What is the controlling ideas about it, so I can build upon the prior knowledge or the thing that this meeting about, because I'm not familiar with this subject.
So in general, I think we will discuss mainly the question how artistic approaches. So this could be art projects, it could be theater projects, it could be projects working music or dance, how they can contribute to peace building processes and how they can be integrated into peace building programs.
So, so how to use those things to build peace? Is that what you are saying?
I mean, I wouldn't say that I have the tools and the knowledge to say this is how it works, definitely, but for sure I would like to discuss what are the possibilities, the potentials, and also the risks and things that do not work out so well or not so easily. Exactly.
Okay, so I will stick around and hear you out.
Thank you very much. Great. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, the next question I would like to, again, do it in the chat function is, after we discussed what is peace building, what is art? So what are your first associations with this? We have expression, creativity twice, imagination again, so there's one connecting point already. Contemplation. Peace. Freedom. A message to transfer. Art is the self-inner embodiment which is being reflected through different kinds of art. Transfer again. Live empty from conflicting. The ability to express emotions, our experience, and creating a sense of identity and community. And focusing on sense experience in relating to our environment. Emotions, this is kind of connected maybe. Universal, non-codified. Attitude. Emotions again. Passion. So here I see a lot of things coming up that would probably also apply both for the field of peace building and for the art field. So there are lots of connections. Yes, imagination as well. Okay. Thank you very much. A personal fingerprint. Interesting. Maybe you would like to elaborate on this a little bit more. Bassam, I'm not sure if I'm saying your name right.
Yeah, hello everyone. Can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I think you asked me about what I meant by or how can we connect or relate art to a personal fingerprint, because in fact art is closely related to creativity, and the artist, whatever his field of creativity is, so is sometimes is incited or is bound to let's say to have his fingerprint on the artistic expression he is working on. And at the same time, I think sometimes he is bound to, let's say, to transcend or to transfer a message that should be collectively grasped or understood. So there is a kind of dichotomy between art as something personal, something emotional, something intimate, to art as something that is social, that is common, that is sometimes universal.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so it's a little bit maybe a way of connecting people from different contexts also through a shared personal realm, if I understand you correctly.
Yeah, and let me add something. So that's why we are attending this webinar. It's about how can theater, which is one type of art, can has a vital role in what we call conflict mitigation or conflict transformation, because so art transcends the let's say the personal, emotional, individual dimension to have a more social and common dimension.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah. There was one more point added now. Painting. Yes, of course. There are lots of different forms. I see a raised hand from Ahmad again.
Yeah, I raised my hand when my friend. So I love the comment from my friend here. He seems that he's well aware of art. Just one thing, I think art in all its kinds or types, like writing, poetry, writing, sculpturing, painting, music, dance, everything is a reflection of our inner self. And in this way, we can share our feelings or emotions and even thoughts to others. So I may not have the ability to transfer my emotions through words. I can't do that, but I can do it through painting, let's say. So this is the importance here, maybe. And from here, maybe we can link it to peace building topic, to the main topic, maybe. And that's it.
Yes, thank you. And this is also something that has been used in the slightly different field of art therapy also, where art is really used as a means of things that are unspeakable in other formats. Yes. Okay, great. Thank you very much. That was really good to get an idea of who I'm talking to in this weird online formats where you never really get the grasp of your audience. So I will share my screen again to continue a little bit with the presentation. Here we go. So this we went through. So yes, exactly. With the next picture, I would like to get into this topic or this question of how does art enable us to get into a relationship with the world around us in a specific way. And actually, I stole this example from my colleague Dagmar. So Dagmar, if you're listening now, you might be, I hope you will be smiling now. Dagmar used this image or a similar image in a presentation we were once having with future Swiss diplomats on the question how art can play a role in diplomatic procedures as well. And Dagmar used this, and I'm going to copy this now to visualize a little bit how there are different ways of interacting or looking at the world around us. So there's one way which we often use, I think, in everyday life. It's the logical or rational way of looking into the world. So you would have a look at the sky and at the clouds, and you would check, is it going to rain? Is this going to stay sunny? Can we stay out by the beach? Should we go home? These kind of way of assessing your surroundings with a logical kind of view. The other way of looking into the sky is more like a gazing. You look up and you look into the clouds and you think, what do I see? And then maybe here, I don't know, on the left, you would see, I don't know, a dog, or maybe it's a dinosaur, or maybe a little dragon. There's more steam coming from the mouth. So you start imagining and you see the world in a really different way. And as we were also hearing from you before, this kind of different way of imagining the future or the world around you could be really helpful in peace building or in conflict transformation. And I think, as probably most of you know from your own experience, if you are in a conflict, it's really hard to change the perspective because we always look through our own eyes. So what I would like to propose is to see art as a possibility to look at the world in a different way, and to engage with the world around us in a way that is not so much focused on logic and on kind of a square way of thinking, but a more open and engaging way that allows us to let things pass and look at them in a different light than we usually do. To make this a little bit more concrete, I would like to share now with you a couple of examples here from our work in Lebanon. Here at the Civil Peace Service, we do not usually implement projects directly. We work through local partner organizations. This can be theaters or NGOs, different stakeholders. And one of the theaters we're working with, it's not a formal partner yet, but someone we collaborate with, is Sada Playback Theater. They are located in Tripoli in the north of Lebanon. And Tripoli, for the context, is a really poor city where there has been active fighting going on until 2014, mainly between two neighborhoods, Bab el-Tibana and Jabal Mohsen. And it's like always a conflict with several layers. It's about economic issues, but also about religious conflicts. It's like always quite a complex situation. And Sada Theater, they are located right on the former front line. Here you can see the neighborhood on the left. And they decided to open a theater space on the former front line to invite people from both neighborhoods to come together and to share stories and also memories of the war or of the conflict, but also personal stories that are not directly related. Sada Playback Theater, they mainly use one specific method. It's playback theater, which is a special interactive form of theater where people from the audience are invited to share a story in front of the audience. And then the troupe of professional actors, they kind of reenact the story in an abstract way. They use music a lot, choreography, sometimes also poetry, and to kind of reflect the story the people from the audience shared with them. And then the narrator, has the chance to correct them if something wasn't explained in a good way and do it again. So it's an interactive format between storytelling and theater. Yes, I could show you a short video if you're interested in. Maybe we should do this. It's always better to have a look at theater than to talk about theater. So here we go. It has subtitles, and let me know if you cannot read or hear well. Can you see it?
No, we can't see.
We can't see, yes.
We'll try again. Now, can you see it?
Yes, now it's okay.
Yes.
Okay, so here we go again.
مسرح إعادة تمثيل هو مسرح اجتماعي نحن أكثر أشخاص بيعيدوا تمثيل القصص والمشاعر والآراء اللي الناس قدامنا والجمهور اللي عم بيطرحها بنقدم له إياها كهدية.
أحلى شعور لما تطلع تحكي قصتك وتكون أنت ما عم تعرف تعبر مزبوط عن الشيء اللي عم تحسه، والناس يلي تطلع تمثل هن يفهموك ويعبروا عن الشيء اللي أنت مش قادر تقوله.
أنا جنسيتين لبنانية وسورية، بس بسبب الحرب صار عندي ضياع بين الجنسيتين، يعني انتمائي لوين؟ أنا سورية ولا لبنانية؟ شو سوري؟ هون بس قلبي هون.
أنا كسوري هون أنا من واجبي يكون عم اشتغل على أي شيء يكون عم يبني السلام، صاير في بلوك دائما بين أي منطقتين نكون عم نتنازع، ونحن لازم نكون عم نشيل هذا البلوك، عم نمحيه إذا كان فينا.
هياخدوني بهرب بهرب.
شيء أثر فيني من خلال تمرين البلاي باك هو قد إيه إنه هو صعب أنت تجسد مشاعر تستفزك من جوا.
ابني كان عمره 6 سنين وبدأ مشوار العزف وممارسة كل أنواع التسلط الذكورية. أنت قوية هذا ابنك لازم يسمعني، بس تتعصب ما يصلح لك تعجز مرة. يعني قلت لي قوي
Okay. Now you should be able to see my screen again, right?
Yeah, clear.
Yes, so this was the playback theater troupe in Tripoli. So yes, what they mainly do is they work on stories and narratives around the neighborhood, but also on personal issues, as we were hearing about identity and belonging. Another example is one organization there called Scenario. It's an NGO working both in Jordan and in Lebanon, but they also have a small UK branch. They mainly work with youth, children, and then up to the age of, I think, mid-20s. And they work especially with groups with really different backgrounds, different nationalities, so with Lebanese, Palestinians, and Syrians. And they partner with different institutions, with schools, at the moment also a lot with parents, since there's no school because of COVID since March in Lebanon, and also with orphanages or community centers. And their approach is that the participants in their performances, they bring their own topics and ideas and issues, and they are supported by professional theater facilitators to help them to transform their own ideas and stories into performances. This group, which you can see here, it's a youth group that have been working for the last 2 years, and it's mainly Palestinians and Lebanese working together. And they produced a theater play, which actually premiered last week when there was a short window of opportunity between the different lockdowns, and theaters could open for 2 weeks. And I think what is the biggest kind of achievement in their programs is not maybe what they do on stage, but what is happening afterwards. So there, for example, there are lots of different young people that now still have friendships across the different communities they are from. So here in Lebanon, there's many people that have objections or fear or stereotypes when they think about the Palestinian settlements here in Lebanon, because they are not controlled by the Lebanese authorities, they're controlled by their own Palestinian security forces. So there are many stereotypes, and there's also many people, Lebanese people, being afraid of going to those Palestinian camps. And in this group, there were so strong friendships formed that now many of the kids, they stay over at each other's houses, be it in the camps or outside the camps. And I think this is really one of the, it's hard to measure these kind of achievements, but I think this is really one of the ones that is most valuable. So they're really contributing to the reduction of stereotypes among different groups. What they also, sorry, was there a question? No, okay. What they also do, they have a women's theater group in the Bekaa, that is the region in Lebanon bordering Syria. And there are Syrian and Lebanese women participating. And the interesting thing is there also the age span. They are between 15 and 65, I think. So they really come with really different concerns and ideas. And they manage to somehow bring them all together. And it's interesting because they are also their own power dynamics. I mean, age is also something that is connected to, I don't know, authority sometimes. So they're really, really interesting procedures happening in the back. What they also do is activities with children. Usually they develop toolkits also for schools. But what they also do is informal activities like here. This was last year in October in Beirut. And as some of you know, last year in October, there was a huge protest movement, the so-called Thawra, or revolution, where many people across Lebanon really went on the streets to fight for a new civil Lebanon, for a new kind of order of society, really, in a broad sense. And what Scenario did is they organized activities for children, where children would be supported in different artistic tools to express their own visions of Lebanon. So they asked them, what kind of a country would you like to live in, and help them to express these wishes and ideas for the future.
Maja, you have a question?
Yes, go ahead. Whoever has one, please shoot.
Yeah, someone posted a question on the chat box.
Yes, I can't read it from now, so maybe you could read it out.
Yes, a quick.
That's my question. My question is, I'm interested to know maybe what kind of art genre are they using? What kind of art?
At Scenario, you mean?
Yes. The two scenarios that you have shared.
Yes. Okay, so they are mainly working with theater, especially with the youth groups and the women theater group. And for the children and school activities, they also use painting and other creative tools. I think they also sometimes work with poetry and storytelling. So this is still kind of also connected to theater.
Nice. Thank you. Well understood.
Sure. What they did, I'm not going to show you the video now, but you have the link here in case you want to check it out later. Since usually they are collaborating with schools and teachers and developing creative toolkits that help teachers to use creative methodology in school teaching. They cannot do this now because of COVID. As I said, schools are closed in Lebanon since March. So they developed an online offer where they do short tutorial videos for parents, how they can use creative methods such as storytelling or different theater exercises for homeschooling. And they offered this support via WhatsApp, and they developed a really simple app that is working without a lot of internet. And then they have these little YouTube videos where they have small prepared sessions where parents can use creative methods with their children. So they support parents in homeschooling as well at the moment. So this is quite valuable since there's not a lot of school activities going on, and many parents kind of feel left alone with having to teach their children. Yes. So from an institutional perspective, why should peacebuilding programs like Civil Peace Service, for example, include artistic approaches? And as many of you were also voicing in the beginning, there are some assumptions that are being used or that are kind of laying the ground for institutions to introduce more and more art activities into their peacebuilding or conflict transformation programs. One of our assumptions is that theaters and art spaces are still social spaces, of course, where different social rules and norms apply, but that in these theater spaces or in spaces where art is being used, sometimes slightly different norms can apply. So people can sometimes voice things that are kind of unspeakable in different settings. So many of the participants say that they perceive theaters or art spaces as safe spaces where they can express things that they usually cannot. For example, in one of the playback theater performances in Tripoli, there was a young man and he was talking about how he, on stage, how he felt kind of different than other men usually in his community, and that he feels under pressure because he always needs to perform to being like a strong guy, and he really doesn't feel like this. And yes, he really shared some intimate things that usually I do not hear a lot in other regular conversations, especially not in kind of more traditional parts of the country. So there he felt that he could share things in the theater space that usually he would be more ashamed of speaking. As well, sometimes a theater space or an art space allows people to experiment with roles and with to try out new roles and new behaviors that are usually socially maybe not accepted. But in the theater, it's only the theater, so you can try out kind of new things. And this might also help people to reduce stereotypes about others they're sharing a space with. So generally, we assume that by bringing people together and inviting them to connect to each other through, for example, a theater exercise, they start to connect to each other more as human beings and not to see the other person so much as a carrier of an identity. For example, for the Syrian or for the Palestinian and the Lebanese youth in the Scenario project, they, in the end, they said they forgot if they were Palestinian or Lebanese. It didn't matter because they were connecting much more on other shared issues. Young people in the same age group were sharing, then focusing on this kind of formal layer of identity. You are Palestinian or you are Lebanese. So we hope that art spaces can help to build connections between people from different communities, that they can have to reduce stereotyping and othering and racist practices. And as also you were mentioning before, they can be a means of self-expression, and to decide for yourself as who you would like to present yourself. Are there any comments or questions so far?
Yeah, I was raising my hand, so
please go ahead.
So I totally agree with this. I liked the idea where art, let's say, for example, that you showed us the acting. It's I can say maybe it's a tool for peace building or like building connections, reducing stereotypes. And I can share an experience. We did this thing here in Lebanon. I was with the organization, and this organization told us like we have to do this, let's say, distributing gifts for Syrian children, and with cooperation of Lebanese students also. So we gathered around and we went to this Syrian camp. We did lots of activities there, and like painting, drawing, singing, and doing dabke, you know. So they had a lot of fun, the children there. And this is the first time for them, those Lebanese students. They were from a private school. It's in Beirut. I forgot its name. So one of them said that this is the first time I visit a camp for Syrian people, and he thought in his pre-knowledge, he assumed that it's a place where like gangsters live, and it's like a hood, you know, and the bad people. So when he visit or see this camp and interact with people, this stereotype like vanished right away, and he built connections with those people, and he felt really happy to wash away this assumption and this thought about Syrian people.
Yes. Yes,
That's
it's a good example of connecting, and especially something like DAPCA that is probably kind of transversal in the region, works well to connect and to see that actually people are sometimes more similar than people assume they would be. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Also, again, from an institutional perspective, what we hear a lot, especially from our headquarters, is that we still have to measure how these kind of things can be successful. And this can be quite challenging, like the project management and evaluation, since the indicators we're using, if something is successfully contributing and an artistic intervention is successfully contributing to the peace process, is really, really, yeah, it's hard to say. Indicators are mainly qualitative, not quantitative. So it's something the institutional world sometimes struggles with. I find there's one tool which is quite helpful in having a look at peace processes and to reflect on them. We call it Reflecting on Peace Processes, RPP, where you work with different indicators. And basically, here's a matrix for this. You look at the people you would like to address in your project. So either you look into if you want to address more people, like a huge group of people, or key people, key stakeholders, and then you look at the changes you would like to see, and then you define indicators for the changes and to see if something is going in or your project is going into the direction you would like it to go to. For example, you have a look at the individual or personal level. This is the attitudes, the behavior, knowledges, relationships, how do they change? Or you'll have a look at the more socio-political level, where you have a look at groups or organizations, institutions or structures, and you see how are they changing in the process of a project. And the same you can, of course, also do for the key people, key stakeholders you are addressing. Are they, for example, I don't know, religious representatives or municipality figures? Are they changing their own attitudes or behaviors? For example, if you look at it from a gender perspective, are they including equal participation of men and women in panel discussions they're hosting? These kind of things. Or again, in groups and organizations on the organizatorial level, you can have a look, are there also, for example, women in decision-making positions in these organizations or not? This is just one example. Other indicators can include if there are lasting connections between participants or communities, even when the project was finished. For example, for the scenario project, the lasting friendships are actually quite a powerful indicator, I think. Then, as you were mentioning, Ahmed, the question of stereotyping. So you could, for example, use the indicator if participants recognize false information and stereotyping about other groups after they went through your program, and if they have the knowledge and the tools to take action against it. So these are some indicators that can help you assess if a project is going into the direction you're hoping to. Nevertheless, there are many risks and challenges, I think. And for me, the most grave one is the question if there are unexpected impacts on the participants. And I think we have this quite frequently, that participants feel safer in, for example, a theater space than they actually might be for real. For example, if it's a really sensitive context, we once had a situation where one of the participants in our art project, she was addressing topics within this art project, was a theater performance, which she couldn't address in her family, for example, but she felt safe to do so in the theater. But then, of course, her parents came to see the performance, and afterwards they were still confronting her. It was really about questions of upbringing and religion and the family context. So afterwards, her parents were really not happy with this. And there was quite a big family dispute about this question, if she should be allowed to come to the projects again or not. So there, I think it's especially important to have really context-sensitive facilitators. This is, of course, always important if you're working in conflict context, but sometimes I think this point might be underestimated if it's about art and theater projects, because often the assumption is, oh, it's only art, it cannot do anything anyway, which is a huge benefit because it allows people to be more free than usually. But this also can be a risk, of course, because there are sometimes some real life consequences people have to face. Then also gaps and stereotypes, they can be reinforced if the project design in general is not conflict sensitive. So especially on the question of stereotyping, you have to be really careful, of course, especially if you're using national or cultural symbols or anthems. For example, if you invite musicians to work with a group of people and they're not familiar with the kind of the overall meaning of some songs that are being used, it could easily sound like a nice, I don't know, song being performed, but then later people might feel offended because it's connected to a special situation. Kawther.
Well, thank you, Maja. I don't know if the participant who didn't have a chance to ask a question, if we don't mind, we go ahead and take some time for question for those who couldn't to participate during the presentation. So just a reminder, please be sure to type your question into the question box in your control panel, because the chat box little bit confused to follow the question did you send it to us.
That's it? Are there any questions? I'm not seeing the chat window.
Yeah, in the chat window, no question yet. So, but Ahmed, I think, have a question. You can share with us, Ahmed, because Maja couldn't follow the chat.
No, actually, it's not a question. It's a comment or follow-up. I was saying that in the first place, if the person is not willing to open his heart and mind for other people, to listen to them and to acknowledge them as human beings, he will never understand them, and he will never eliminate his pre-consumption or his stereotype. This is just a comment.
Yes, true.
So you can complete if you want.
Okay, so I have one more slide. Yes.
Sorry.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah. From this comment, I want to ask, how can we make those kind of people, like, or how to prepare them to listen to others, to open their heart and mind? So I understand that some of the youth, children or people, they participate in some kind of art in multicultural, that they acting to convey a message, which is good. But how can we do this, and how can we alter the negative consumption of all people who have pre-consumption or stereotype about other people? How can we do that? How can we open their mind up and open their heart?
Yes, I mean, of course, there's no fixed solution for everybody and for all contexts. I think what we can only do is to contribute small steps to societies and communities, and this is all we can do. I think one quite promising practice, for example, Scenario is doing, is that all their participants that participate in their programs, they are offered a training program to become facilitators themselves. So they can then themselves be like little multipliers who can keep on working in their own respective communities. And I think this is very valuable since they often have already some trust in their own communities. So it's easier to convey positive messages about the so-called other or the other groups if it's coming from someone that is trusted within one community. So I think building on some community members and equipping them with the tools and the training skills to pass on their knowledge and their openness, I think is a good practice.
Yeah, so it's a long journey.
It is definitely a long journey, yes. And we don't know if we will ever fully succeed anywhere. Probably it's impossible, yes. So let me quickly conclude. I think we're also running a bit out of time with the last topic. It's the question how art can be kind of integrated also in more high-level diplomatic contexts. So we know lots of examples, and this is already quite mainstreamed, I think, of working with art and theater on community level, which is also very valuable. But there should also be a way of including artistic approaches into more formal settings. And maybe we can all think about it, and we know it from our own experience that we're always in conversations in different settings being different people. So if we're talking in our family context, I guess all of us will be behaving differently than we are behaving at the workplace, for example. And my suggestion would be to introduce different formats to more high-level conversation settings as well. I once made the experience myself. I was in Geneva at the UN office for a meeting, and there I entered this meeting room, and it's for UN standards, it's still a small, so I guess a relatively personal meeting room. But for me personally, it created a very specific atmosphere. So we were sitting in this space. It was not huge, but we were not talking to each other directly. We were using these little computers to speak, and you would have to press a little button and then speak into the microphone instead of just talking directly to each other. And for me, it did this one effect that I started being very cautious about what I was saying, and it put me into kind of the opposite of a brainstorming mindset. So whenever I said something, I was really carefully thinking it through before speaking, which is also a good thing. But I think it's not the kind of mindset that is needed in order to come up with new visions and for an open brainstorming process. And as we heard in the beginning, imagination is one of the key elements of peace building. So for me, this was kind of the opposite of a space that invited me to imagine things. A quite different setting is this one, and I know this is pretty much from the other spectrum. This is an artistic intervention by an artist. She's called Maja Leo. This was in New York City, where she installed this really long, this is only a small fraction, really long table in the public space, and put whole foods on the table, like whole watermelons, whole loaves of bread, some olive oil, but nothing to dip into it with, and a set of questionnaires, and most importantly, a group of facilitators. So what she did is she created the space where people had to collaborate with each other if they wanted to eat something. So, for example, they had to smash a melon because there were no knives or no tools. They had to smash a melon and to do it together in order to all get a piece of the melon. And I know it's a long way, and I don't yet see diplomats sitting on one table like this, smashing watermelons together and discussing how you would have to collaborate in order to achieve your goals. But I think it's an interesting example of how different conversational settings can be put together. So here are some suggestions, and this is like the field of cultural diplomacy is still not really developed so far, but some ideas that are being circulated are, for example, to invite more artists and designers to design kind of human-scaled meeting spaces that are more inviting for interaction and collaboration rather than confrontation. So quite the opposite of this classical UN setting. And to include more informal activities into dialogue processes this is already done, I think, in lots of the back channel negotiations, this is taking place. But there are also formats like sharing the different parties' music beforehand, sharing traditional foods, looking at arts and handcrafts to increase the level of mutual understanding and also empathy for the other group, to not only see them as yes, an opposing party, but really to connect to people more on a human level. Another option would be to ask theater professionals to work with both parties or the different parties based on storytelling tools. There are some really good storytelling tools that help you imagine a different scenario, imagine a different future, getting off the beaten track and the fixed ideas that have been circulated before. So this is just some ideas how artistic interventions could also be integrated into these kind of more formal dialogue settings. And this is it from my side. So if you're having any questions or anything else to discuss, I would be very happy to do so now with you. And I will stop sharing my screen now so I can see the chat function as well. Any questions? Thank you, Bates, for your kind comment. Kawther, you were asking of something about a link in the chat. Which link would you like me to share?
Yeah, you said that there are a video about an initiative in Lebanon. So you said to us to see you later. So I mentioned if you can share with us
I
the
would
link.
share both links with you now. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Okay, if you share with the participant as well, because I can see it as a panelist, not participant.
Here it tells me all.
Okay, I will share. I will do. Yes, here you go. Yeah, exactly.
It's 2 links, perfect.
There are a question. How can we integrate art in different types of conflict resolution interventions, like mediation, negotiation, and so on?
Yeah, Dwa, would you like to elaborate on this a little bit more?
Yeah, I would like to know if you have any examples related to the contribution of art in the mediation process or negotiation process from your experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard to get first-hand examples on this, but I once had a meeting with quite a high-ranking UN official in Geneva, and he was telling me that what they do a bit more now is this exchange of music beforehand with participants. And this is like informally, it's like more in the preparation. They play music from both or different parties to get people into touch with each other and to bring them into like a different mindset already. And I was quite surprised because he's really on a high level and he was really open to exploring these kind of things more, but he also said it's something that is usually not the first part that is being done. And I think there's more room for experiment in kind of in the mediation support units of the different negotiation processes, where it's also more about informal formats and setting the ground for the high level discussion. So it's maybe not on the level of the track one negotiations, where there's mainly people that are, I don't know, politicians or high ranking officials, but on the medium track where there is still decision makers, but people that are more connected to the communities. I think this would be a better entry point for the time being.
Okay, as well, we have a question from Maggie. Maggie asked, is there a way to connect with the other participants about this conversation on art?
Who are the other participants in this, Maggie? Maybe you could also elaborate a little bit more.
Dua, if a Tanaghom platform in social media, on Facebook page, for example, or in Tanaghom website, are there any platform or forums can the participant discuss with each other?
Yeah, we can establish that. Actually, this is one of our upcoming program goal, to build a platform for artists and peace activists to have more collaboration and exchange their experience. And of course, we will let you know, whoever participates in our webinars or in any of our activities, we will let you know about our platform.
Great.
Yes. Another question from Lal from Afghanistan. My question is that how to compare the art to the religious type conflict?
Yes, this is a really challenging question. And depending also the context, I think this is really changing a lot. I think there are quite some contexts where artistic interventions are kind of something that have to happen in a really safe space. For example, when we're working in BK, it's usually helpful to start working, for example, in a women-only group, when it's easier to, for example, for really religious participants, it's easier to share and to open among other women, and also to move and to touch other women. It's easier to stay within the one group. So, and then there are other people who say, they would like, they prefer not to listen to music because it's not according to their own living of their own religion. So with these questions, I think it has to, really always have to make sure that it's adaptive to the context. But then also in religion, there's lots of arts play a big role in religion. I mean, every religion, I think, produced some artifacts and some things to express gratitude for that what people believe in. So this could actually also be a connecting point. But I don't think there are any general answers to this. But this is also a good question to share here. Maybe some of you, of the participants, you have some experience with this and would like to share. But Dua or Kawther, from your work, I don't know if there's anything you would like to share on. It's a really interesting topic. Maybe for the next webinar, even to elaborate.
Exactly.
More.
It's a good idea for our next webinar. So last question from Nicola. I am interested to know how to do you measure impact, especially with street or community theater.
Yeah, Nicola, you also have your hand raised. Do you want to add anything to this question before?
Okay, yes. My name is Nicholas Songora. I work with an art social change organization from Mombasa, Kenya, and we usually apply participatory educative theater to provoke dialogue and discussions in communities, finding for solutions to challenges facing them. And sometimes we encounter a challenge, especially with development partners, in wanting to discredit theater as a means of engagement with the communities. The fact that they bring the issue of how best would you do what we call evaluation to ascertain the impact brought by the participatory educative theater performances in the community. So my interest was maybe at your own experience, what you have been doing, are there maybe more skills that could be used to kind of do evaluation for the impact at community level?
Yes, that's always a tricky question. So what we do in general is we use this RPP matrix I was presenting earlier, the Reflecting on Peace Practices matrix, and there we take a closer look at the indicators. So before we start a project, we define indicators for the change we would like to see according to our theory of change. So for example, if we say one indicator would be that people from two communities that usually do not share spaces, they get together regularly in the theater space, for example, in Sada Theater in Tripoli, and they are members of different communities that usually were not in touch with each other, get to know each other and share a space. So this, for example, is one thing we look at. Another way, of course, is doing interviews. We mainly do this, not ourselves, but our partner organizations do interviews with their participants in order to evaluate the effect it has on their respective communities. And yes, for us, we don't really collect as many numbers. This is one thing you could, of course, do, measure how many audience members participate in projects, these kind of more classical things. We also monitor them, but it's not the biggest indicator for us. Yes, and then of course there are also participatory tools. One of our partner organizations, they're called Tanaghom. They work a lot on open spaces and participatory approaches. What they do is they're really closely connected to the communities they work with. So they are in really close contact with the communities. They don't necessarily do formal interviews, but sometimes also this. And they conduct community assessments, where they not only talk to the people that directly participated in projects, but also in their surrounding communities to see if the effect was also on the entire community and not only directly on the participants. But yes, it's really, really hard to measure the effects. I think in peace building in general and in artistic approaches maybe especially.
Okay. Thank you, Maja.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Maja. It looks you covered all of our questions. Maja, is there anything else you wanted to cover before wrap up?
No, thank you all really very much for the fruitful discussion and for being so lively. It's not a standard in online format, so that's really very well appreciated. And thanks, Kawther, for the great facilitation.
Yeah, we are excited for Tanaghom School in December,
exactly.
Inshallah. Yes.
Follow up, inshallah.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your being here. Maja shared with us how can art change our interaction with the world. Also know more about artistic approaches in classical peace building program, example from Lebanon. She also gave us an idea about how art can integrated into dialogue setting. Before I finished, I would like to thank WJF team behind the scene, Dua. Thank you, Dua, very much. And thank you, Nadir, our IT specialist. And if you have anything to tell us, Dua, go ahead.
No, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you again for joining us today, and we are looking forward to seeing you next time, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.